Is there as like again, is there a way to hedge against? I mean, it was like if you're an engineer at a big company, your boss's boss is probably making those decisions, and there's not a lot you can do other than make
Yeah.
them make the most of the cards that you're dealt. But being in your position now where you can make that choice, how do you
Yeah.
is there a way you can like head that off from the beginning and let them know like this is not we're not a ticket shop. I'm not going to just be sending you random tasks. It's like I want you because I assume that you want that team culture, right? You want them
Yeah.
embedded, you want them,
Yeah.
high communication, high transparency. How do you, how do you still leverage that offshore team, but still, I don't know, like, is it reasonable for us to expect that culture?
Yeah, yeah. No, I have found it's very reasonable. You have to find the right people, obviously, and I think like ultimately you can't just be like, "Hey, are you working multiple jobs?" Like, of course they're never going to tell you that. But but what I found is like as you make the culture very clear that like, ultimately like you're looking for someone who's going to own the product and like who's going to like get deep in the business side of things and whatever like these engineers want that they just aren't given that and so
Mm,
when they have that opportunity they're like oh yeah this would be great like this is worth potentially even a pay cut to some degree
mm.
to be able to like have this focus and like have this thing that like we can like build this team build this company build this product
They get that ownership and that autonomy
yeah
that they're missing, which as we in I don't know Western culture we seem to kind of take that part for granted now that like that's how we get our meaning and everything, but maybe that's not as popular of thinking in other cultures.
Well, I
Interesting.
think it's a trade-off that they've made because U.S. company like the alternative is like they work for a local company where they make like nothing and they work like crazy. So they're like, okay, I need to make more money and work less hours. So I'll take whatever the U.S. companies want me to do and like I'll sacrifice this ownership side of things because like
Okay.
I got
So
to at some point.
so maybe it's more about kind of gaming the system than it is about even culture. It's like they know that there's a system with the larger companies that they can work to their benefit financially,
Yeah.
and so those financial incentives are driving a lot of that. Um,
Yeah.
but at the individual level, like you're saying, there's kind of these intangible incentives about the product ownership and
Yeah.
the autonomy that that can win out in a lot of cases.
Yeah. And
Huh.
I would just say the like to me the sweet spot is like if you can give them a decent amount more than they would make locally but with that ownership like it's going to be less than if they were working four jobs but they have that ownership and it's usually works out and if there's the clear
Yeah.
like career growth and whatever and even just like okay like as you grow you're going to be making more money because of the company succeeding whatever else
Right.
they're ready for that.
Okay, that's a really good point. Let's talk about that for a second because I mean, that's a huge question on a lot of people's minds is like, how much is this really going to cost? What should I expect? Because you see stuff all over the internet from like, Fiverr, right? Like $5 for things up to when I worked at a larger company, I think we were paying anywhere from 70 to 80 bucks an hour for South American developers.
Yeah.
So like how do you sort of what price do you expect to pay? How do you hone that into, like you're saying, kind of the local economy of whether it's South America or Eastern, whatever?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, so I would say like okay, that like 70, $80 an hour situation. One other factor here is like when you're working through agencies, which is like usually what you got to start at least, they're taking like 50% usually. Anyway, so the like what the people are making themselves is like half of that. So like if you can pay what you're paying the agency to people directly, like that's a dream job for them.
What should a founder or a CTO who's looking at an offshore team, looking at offshore people, what should they expect to pay? And I think you're saying even though the 70 to $80 might be higher than what would be listed, because some places in South America I've seen as low as like 20 to 40 bucks an hour,
Yeah.
like super, like ridiculously low. But you're kind of saying like, look, if you find the right people, it's kind of worth paying them, you know, something around, I don't know if would you say as high as 70 to 80, 60 to 70?
Yeah. Yeah, I think you can pay less than that. It also it really depends on the local dynamics. So like if you're doing South America, India, Ukraine, like there's a lot of different pieces there. I think the more you can find out like what's the average salary people are taking home and like frequently look at like the tax rate. Like what's the max tax bracket? Because like that's usually a good indicator of like if you're paying like above the max tax bracket, you're probably in a pretty good place.
Mm.
And like because it really just depends like the other factor is like okay look at what the local companies the local like tech companies are paying and that's also a helpful factor of like the you want to be higher than them but like you can do less than like a US salary that kind of thing.
Nice. I actually have to. I know like what Indeed has a specific job board for Mexico. All right, would you actually just go to like company websites, just do some research on like engineering companies in Mexico, let's say, go to their websites and just look at
Yeah.
their job postings, or is there something better like Glassdoor that you can just go like, psh, like give me the stats on this region?
Yeah, I haven't found anything like that where it's like a very clear. It's mostly been through like talking to people. I think, yeah, I don't have a good answer for like the like perfect place. I think like Indeed, that's probably not a bad place. Even like LinkedIn to some degree.
Mm,
If you're looking at that geography, you could probably get some sense there. You can also like the big companies like Uber and Google and whatever are generally paying pretty close to like local local rates. So like they're general like you can generally get a sense from them because they're usually more standardized as far as like showing salaries places and stuff like that.